Welcome to the latest printed press. I'm Aysen Djemal, and we are back again doing our COVID-19 special programs with announcements moving so fast in relation to COVID-19. We've decided to start to do this on a more regular basis. I'm happy to have Metto with us again, the CEO of the TCCA. Hello, Edim. How are you tonight?
Thanks for having me back. I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Feeling a little bit apprehensive, obviously, because there are lots of changes taking place. And we were talking just before the program about how it's quite confusing. So obviously, I've had a lot of people sort of inquiring and talking about, all of the changes and, stating their concerns. So I think it's a much needed program. I mean, with the announcements in relation to COVID moving really fast, what are the TCCA proposals for keeping the community informed and aware?
So, what we said 2 weeks ago was that TCCA is moving quite fast and trying to keep abreast of all the changes that are happening, which are happening on an almost daily basis. So, what announcements happen today may totally change tomorrow. So, it is very confusing. There's lots of sectors which are affected. What we want to do as TCCA is to focus on the prime community that we're focusing on, which is mainly the elderly of Turkish-speaking community, the people who are disabled, the people who are frail, and people who do not have access to services they may need. So in the past, what we did was we launched the COVID initiative, and we're looking at relaunching that within a couple of weeks. The first step to doing that was that we launched a number of jobs which we've advertised, and closing date is this weekend. This will allow us as an organisation to serve the community far more effectively and have professionals in those various roles. That includes drivers. We've advertised for drivers who want to focus on doing deliveries on a daily basis near enough in certain areas. So one day it might be Haringey, one day it might be Enfield. We also want to, streamline our befriending scheme, because the befriending scheme has been run by volunteers, will continue to be run by volunteers, but the management of it, that's ensuring that everyone is DBS checked, that we have correct contact with the people who are providing befriending for, utilise a service point where people who are receiving befriending may have certain other issues that they might need dealt with. So we've advertised for a befriending officer. We're advertising for a coordinator to coordinate all these various activities that we've managed to get funding for. And finally, what we're trying to do is trying to set up a bespoke website which will be bilingual, Turkish and English, and be able to showcase these programs that we're doing on here and other programs that the community might produce, other information that the community might produce, and also point people in the right direction around new systems that are launched by the government, like QR, track and trace, all those things that have been launched but haven't been correctly explained to our community. So that's where we're at as TCCA. So we expect things that are going to happen quite quickly, and we are going to be recruiting within the next I would say 5 to 10 days, and the new initiative, which is a relaunch of the existing initiative, will happen, I would say, within 2 weeks. So next time, hopefully, that I'm on your program, I'll be able to say to you what's happening. If people are in trouble, they should be coming through to us, and what they should be doing. I would say on a final note on the aspect around what TCCA is doing is that we will be launching regular videos that show that we in the centre are completely COVID compliant, and also the other centres that we manage are also in a similar position. And I think it's important that we stress that we do need to, because there's many people come to us and say, can't we bend this rule, can't we bend that rule? And it's no, legally, we need to follow the guidelines. If you agree with it or don't agree with it, we need to follow the guidelines set up by central government. We can challenge those, and we can put information across, and we as an organisation don't mind doing that. But at the end of the day, we are following protocols that have been set up by central government, and we need to follow those protocols. There's no kind of 32 kişi gelecek, so bir şey değil, 30 geçti, or 15 people, and we can spend. These protocols set up, and we need to follow them.
Reason. That's right. I think it's very important. It's for our safety and the well-being of people on a community. And, there's big fines that would take place, and it's a very serious business. So I think we need to be very respectful of that. Even when you're walking into restaurants or you're going into different supermarkets or people's shops, I think, I've seen a lot of aggression lately, and people need to just really just sort of sit back and really realize that, all of these places are having to follow these strict rules, and there are inspectors. I mean, I went to a restaurant last night and an inspection had just taken place literally 10 minutes before I'd walked in. So people are under pressure, and this is people's livelihoods, so we've got to be respectful of that, definitely, and adhere to the rules, obviously, and keep abreast and up to date with what's going on. Abby Hussein said that we were a little bit late. I apologise for that. It's because we were in discussion about some of the latest things that actually occurred yesterday, so that we could just update each other, and hence why we're a little bit late. So many apologies for that. But honestly, there's always a good reason why we do go on live a little bit later. But it's just because we've just got so much information, and we want to give the latest and the most accurate information to everybody.
I mean, picking up what Abby said as well, is that I mean, I was at a previous kind of meeting to do with COVID before I joined this meeting, so it's partly my fault, but the timing went totally skew with, so it meant that we did start late. I also picked up on what Abby said, and we was discussing this before the show. He mentioned in the previous thread that these discussions need to be longer, need to be happening far more. So one of the things we was discussing before this show was how we can actually enlarge what we do and bring in other specialists that have other specialist areas, i.e. doctors and people who do with the business world and advise the many sectors out there which are suffering due to COVID.
That's right, definitely. Thank you very much, Ellen, for that support. Chanel has said, Salam, I'm very happy to see you both doing another great show. Thank you for the knowledge and support, Edim. As always, Edim, you're supporting us wholeheartedly. Thank you very much for all the work that you do in the community. I mean, major UK changes have occurred. What should we expect in London, do you think, Edim?
I think that when you consider that London's R factor was being kept down to below 1 for a long time, lots of local authorities were very close to rising above the 1 factor in the R ratio. Now we hear that there's only 6 local authorities in London which are below the R, which have a below 1 R factor. Many other local authorities are reaching 2 to 3 as an R factor, and I think that's going to push the local authorities to take more stringent action to keep the R factor as low as possible and try to move it down to below 1 again. That may mean that there might be local lockdowns, there may be other initiatives that are adopted by certain local authorities. I know Tower Hamlets is really pushing for firmer stringent action, and they're trying to initiate more protocols related to bubbles and families not mixing with outside their own bubble of 6. And so I expect a lot to happen in London over the next I would say 2 to 3 weeks. I expect the whole scenario that as we see it today, with the restrictions being based on national restrictions at the moment, being moved towards more local initiatives in London within the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not sure what that looks like, because things change very quickly, and what you assume is going to happen doesn't, and something else more dramatic happens. So we'll see.
Yes, definitely, especially some of the changes that occurred last night, but we're going to move on to that. That was quite dramatic and unexpected, I must admit. So I mean, we've slightly touched upon this, but I'm going to repeat this question because I think it's very important that we cover this properly. Program and relaunching of the COVID-19 initiatives that we've had. What other programs should we expect in relation to COVID now?
So I think we're trying to, I mean, we were fortunate. So when COVID happened and when it first occurred, we first of all launched this pilot, which really took off and helped a lot of members of the community. By June, July, we was looking at financial support to develop some of these concepts that were really working. And we're now seeing the fruits of those applications that TCCA made to these new roles, which will be professionals in those places serving the community. We've also made other applications that will help other organisations. So TCCA doesn't want to take the lead. It wants to utilise the skill set that it has to be able to benefit the community as a whole. And there's other community organisations out there which have their own certain skill sets that we want to utilise. So it's building a framework that we had in place before, but making it more in tune with what's happening out there, and trying to get more funding to support key roles that we need. I mean, there's so many businesses out there which need support around identifying what does COVID compliance mean, and not making their own judgments of it. So one of the other initiatives and the ideas we're thinking about is to create some sort of certification for organisations that would help them to become COVID compliant. So go out, send out an inspector that's paid for out of one of the funding streams that we have, and that would then be able to support the organisation to become aware of where their shortfalls are and help them develop those safeguards they need to have in place so that the organisation can move forward. So I would say that's one of the key areas that we're looking at partnerships, looking at developing ideas, and looking at how this initiative that we have, which we put on hold, can be relaunched, but incorporate as many people and as many organisations that have skill sets that we can use.
I think that's a really good idea. I mean, I must admit, in the last week or so, I must have personally have been approached by small businesses asking for advice, saying where can we go to get advice. Yeah. I think that's really good to have some sort of like mini pre-inspection before an actual inspector comes in, because I think the inspections are actually getting more thicker and faster now, so that people know, small businesses know exactly what to do. I think that's a really great idea, and if anyone can support you with that from the, reaching out, because I think that's a fabulous idea, and I think that's really much needed at the moment.
I think that the Aysen is me and you in the field where COVID compliance is part of our day-to-day work, and we don't understand some of the rules. So let alone other organisations who don't have a good command of English, but yet are a part of our environment, our economy. They're organisations that function day in, day out. They assume that what they've kind of been told is correct, but it is incorrect. And I think it takes professionals that they have trust to come along to kind of tell them what initiatives. Most of these initiatives don't cost nothing. Like the QR sticker, you go online, you print it off for your organisation, becomes bespoke for your organisation, put on your window, and then it formulates a track and trace system that works quite effectively. So things like that we could do as professionals that would help the general organisations that are out there, the local shops, local grocers, the mechanic stores, all those places that still need to work to create financial gain for the people that work in there. They need to be supported somehow, and there's no support coming from a lot of local authorities and either the government, because the government's just focused on trying to get information out, but it's not tailored for our community.
No, it's not. So I think that's where the TCCA really are sort of helping out. And like you said, not just the TCCA, but obviously other organisations as well, for us to all pull in together. I think that's very important. I really like the fact that you always do that and you encourage that. And I think, again, we're coming to those times. Yes.
I mean, like for example, the Eurogate did an amazing job to get the information out. We say that over and over, but it's a platform that people can link into. TCCA couldn't do passing over of information to the community if it wasn't for Eurogate providing that platform. There's also like the Turkish Schools Consortium. They've moved the education framework to online framework to ensure that young people who want to maintain their culture and learn the language or have the ability to do that through a framework that exists. And that's, so there's all organisations doing their own little bits, and it's up to us as a community to try and promote all those. And we do have our shortfalls, all of us have our shortfalls, but rather than being critical of those shortfalls, let's bring in mechanisms that allow us to move forward and develop as an organisation and develop around the services that we want to provide.
Definitely. We've got some more questions coming in and comments. Lejla has put Aysen, thank you very much. And Mehdi Ismet from Cyprus also supporting us, saying well done, Aysen, good luck and good to be back. Gulnil has put a very good question, actually, before we move on to our fifth point. Any updates on vaccines, anything that you know of? I mean, I think we want some medical advice, don't we? We want to actually have professionals coming on and giving us a more in-depth sort of insight. But from what you've heard,
I mean, what it is that I think, again, this is a platform for specialists from our community. So Dr. Meck, there's lots of other doctors, Dr. Tolman, all those doctors who might have further insights should come onto the show. My current knowledge of it is there's a lot of vaccines that have reached the latter stages of being approved. There are there's high standards to be maintained around approval, and looking at how long vaccines normally take to be approved is normally 8 to 10 years. There's vaccines like the Jenner Institute vaccine, which is built on previous vaccines and seems to be working quite effectively, and had a little stumbling block recently. That seems to be moving forward. But most estimations are that, as far as I'm aware, is that vaccines will not be approved until come December or maybe early part of next year. That's from my knowledge. And I would say that what we would need to do for this show is to probably next week to get someone on board who has a greater idea around the situation with vaccine.
I think so. because I think people are very curious about that, as am I actually. And it's quite good news. We're getting closer to it, although there has been
We are.
some stumbling
I
points.
mean,
I think we're in a much better position than we were back in March. It is a bit of a shock to people's systems because I did feel like people were getting back into the swing of things. But at the end of the day, this was something that was predicted. I think it will
yeah,
be a mini stumbling block. I think we've gained a lot of experience. It may not be a complete lockdown, but there will be pockets of lockdowns
yeah,
in different areas, like you say, and maybe a certain amount of time as well, but we don't know for sure. We'll know hopefully by next week what's happening. You know, things are changing on a day to day, but we need
yeah,
to remain positive, I think, with all of
yeah.
this.
I mean, you said something really important there. Is that the fact of the matter is that all the expectations from all the medical advisors was that we will have three high peaks. The first being a major peak, the second being a substantive peak, and that's why all the individuals, all the organisations warning about this second peak that was meant to be worse than the first. And there seems to be in the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, there was a third peak as well. So many feel that there is a situation where we became complacent with the expectations that once summer came, that the numbers had dropped down to quite low numbers, that
Yeah.
the virus was going to die out, that it wasn't going to continue. But most professionals felt that the second wave was coming.
Yeah,
So
I think so. So it was, and when it's the winter months, obviously
yeah,
the pandemic sort of resurfaces, doesn't it? But again, we need the scientific experts, and we will definitely get that on for next week. For our viewers, so
yeah,
everyone needs to tune in for that. Getting lots of comments from everybody. Resso saying, Aysen, good to have you back. Thank you very much. Aisha Adil, who's been doing some great work
yes, yes,
recently
most definitely.
herself. Hi guys. So you know, we commend her as well. Another organisation doing great things for our community during these very hard times. Erdogan Baja, also another regarded person in our community, doing lots of things for our community. Iya and Lardilerim. Abi Hussein has commented about the flu vaccine. If we get that comment up, I think she meant flu vaccines, as it's very hard at the moment to find a place to get the flu vaccines. Yes,
Yeah,
it is very hard, but I'm also talking about for COVID-19 vaccinations for that, because it is in the process of
yeah,
being sorted out. Really, it's been on the table for quite a few months now, and as we know, normally vaccines can take from 2 to 10 years
yes,
to actually pull together and have. And you know, and Dr. Meck, I'm sure, will be able to inform
yeah.
us much more next week. But it's being very much rushed, and when something is rushed, obviously there will be hiccups and things slightly going wrong, but hopefully, like you said, maybe after the new year we will have some sort of a vaccine for this pandemic.
I mean,
um
picking up on what you said is that I think with the normal flu vaccine, people are jumping on board to try to get the flu vaccine as quickly as possible, and because production has been held back slightly, that it is very hard to get a hold of it. My parents have managed to have their flu jabs, and they went to a local pharmacist and they had it. So I think it's a bit of hit and miss. I think that the situation will improve, but yes, it is, at the moment it is difficult to get the flu vaccine.
Yeah, and is testing as well. I know that a few teachers in our school
Yeah,
who
yeah,
have shown
yeah.
symptoms and are sent home are then stuck at home waiting to be tested, and they've had to order it
Yeah,
online, or you know, waiting lists are impossible to, you know, to go to certain stations where you can get it done.
yeah,
So you know, there is a backlog at the moment.
yeah,
I think what we need to do is use our common sense, follow government guidelines, try to keep abreast and up to date with all the changes. I know now in schools, for example, for my son, it's now compulsory to wear a mask, whereas before it wasn't. As of next week, it will be compulsory. So certain changes are taking place, not only in our community, but within schools. And we need to just keep track of that. You know, check your emails, check the government websites, check the TCCA website, tune into our programs, and we will try and keep you informed as much as possible. And like you said, obviously, news updates on various media platforms are great, but we sort of tune it in for our actual community. So I think it's very useful to tune into our program and obviously look at the TCCA website as well. And you were saying that you're going to set up something
yeah. I mean,
specifically for COVID-19.
so at the moment, we have five websites. most of them are issue-led websites, so Hackney Health, this, that, the other. Our main website's undergoing a redevelopment because it's quite antiquated and it has nothing's really changed in it for about 3 to 4 years. As part of the funding that we've received, we have received money to develop a bespoke COVID-19 website, which will both be in English and Turkish and available for the community to help them download documents, help them give them advice, deal with any queries. So all this stuff that's needed within the community will be there. And it's not just for us to utilise, we want to share it with other community organisations who may want to utilise bespoke Turkish, English advice and information or leaflets, or how to do your QR number for your organisation, all those sorts of things. Yeah, that's going to be there, and it's going to take us about 2 weeks to set up. But within 2 weeks, I think we would have a new presence and a new mechanism for being able to communicate with our members and people.
Excellent. Right, now question 5, the elephant in the room. There's been news related to travel to Turkey. And obviously now it's been put on the quarantine list as of yesterday, and the rules will take place tomorrow, and you can give us details about that. How does that affect Turkish Cypriots coming back from Cyprus and Turkish speaking people in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole aspect around information that's coming from Cyprus and Turkey, there's many platforms out there which provide a wealth of information about that. The broad essence of it is there was 3 places which were added to the quarantine list. There was one of the Caribbean islands, there was Poland and Turkey that were added to it. The numbers in Turkey have been growing, but they've been statically growing, and the government's made a decision very quickly. The decision is that from, I think it's 4 a.m. on Saturday, on the 3rd or something like that, on Saturday, that if you do come back to the UK, you'll be treated as same as many other states, that you'd have to go into 2 weeks quarantine. Now, that's the way it is. So if you manage to get back before then you're fine. If you come back after then, you'll have to go into quarantine. That's what it is at the moment.
That's what it is. Can I ask a question actually that I'm curious about? When you quarantine, does your whole family have to quarantine as well with you?
Okay.
Anybody that you're exposed to when you come back? How does that work?
I think the whole essence of it is if you're showing COVID-like symptoms, the whole family needs to quarantine. If you're not showing COVID-like symptoms, then you quarantine at home for 2 weeks. That's my understanding of it. But that's a very convoluted, and that's not saying it as a specialist because I haven't really looked into it that much, and the announcements have only happened very, very quickly. My understanding is you quarantine, you can be fined now if you don't quarantine and you're found to be breaking quarantine rules. And it's you and not the family that will have to quarantine. But I'm not over my hand on my heart because I haven't checked that.
Yes, that's something we'll inquire about, because it was just something that I thought of. Also, people were asking me, again, we may not have the answers, but just something to throw out there for people to think about. People were asking me last night online, say we're in Cyprus and we have to fly and we're on a connecting flight to Istanbul and we're coming back. Cyprus isn't officially on the list. Will we need to quarantine? Also, if we fly from South Cyprus, does that mean we're exempt? So there was 2 questions that were asked of me last night, and I tried to answer it, but I don't know if you've got any other info about that.
So according to, or obviously UK, Northern Cyprus is not regarded as an official state. So by flying through Turkey, you're flying according to the laws that remain within Turkey. So you would have to quarantine. If you're crossing the border and going to the southern part of Cyprus, then whatever the legalities are of southern Cyprus is that you would follow those rules.
Okay, so basically that's something to think about for
So people
for our community, really.
People are flying through Aysen to Turkey for a connecting flight and flying back to UK, they'll be tied to quarantine rules.
Yeah. So basically, if you're going to have to self-isolate, basically, if you're flying even as a connecting flight, which is what the question was.
The other thing is that I think, like the aspect of crossing the border to the southern side is considered that if you crossed over the border with the consensus of the northern side and the southern side, so you've gone over to the northern side, but then if you cross back over, the UK only recognises your point of exit as being Larnaca, airport or Fabos, depending on which one you fly back from. So you'd be according to the Republic's rules.
Yes. So that's for people to look into, really,
Yeah,
and
I
inquire.
think it's a good question. I think what we haven't done in this show is tackled so much the aspect of travel. So we've dealt with it as as like people chatting about it, but not people with experience of it. So I think that maybe, and again, another show that we could do, or you
Yeah.
guys could do, is focus on the travel requirements of being able to travel to Cyprus, likelihood of changes, and it changes every day. Like you have one day you have TRNC rules, you have Turkey rules, where you have Republic of Cyprus, which all affect Turkish Cypriots.
Well, yes. I mean, people were also asking me last night, what if we go to Turkey? Do we need to quarantine there, or is it just when we come back? As far as I know, currently, today, no, you don't have to quarantine there. You only quarantine when you come back. But again, those things may change. Turkey may themselves make changes now,
Yeah, yeah,
according to the UK. So
yeah,
really, it's literally on a day-to-day basis. I think what they're trying to do generally in the UK at the moment is discourage people from traveling. Only travel if it's a necessity is the
yeah,
advice I would give as a layperson. We will certainly bring experts to do with travel. We'll bring experts to do with the vaccine and medical advice, and we will also bring other organisations in. I think we are starting the COVID-19 programs again. A few months ago, we stopped. We closed them because we
yeah,
felt that there was not a need for it. But we did state then, and we are stating now, that when there is a need for it, we would relaunch it. And I
yeah.
think there is a need now because
No,
things
I
are
agree.
changing
I,
on
I
a
think
daily basis.
I think a good idea might be that we as TCCA come on once every 2 weeks, and the in between weeks, if you're up for doing it, then we have the experts in which don't involve me, but they do with their areas of expertise. So, for example, medical, travel, and the other associated areas that people are really concerned about.
Definitely. We've got about 3 minutes left. Abby Hussein is where HR doesn't exist. Larnaca, you don't isolate. Yes. So
Yeah,
people really need to look into that. That might be a way. But any advice for people flying back from Cyprus, as Turkey now is in quarantine list, that's the most advice we can give
yeah,
currently. But we promise to bring more experts in.
yeah.
And like
I
we
agree.
said, the news was only brought out yesterday. So really, what it is if you don't get back by tomorrow, then you will have to isolate for two
Yeah.
weeks.
That's right. And I think you're right in saying that although we have good knowledge around, I mean,
Mm,
I focus on the aspects relating to the third sector, the voluntary sector, and the day-to-day needs of individuals. My focus, obviously, isn't to do with the travel aspects of how COVID affects people traveling to other states.
yeah,
And therefore, I think if we want to maintain the high caliber of advice that we give as media providers, is that we need to bring on experts for those areas. And I think
definitely.
it's quite correct that maybe next week you have something on vaccines, and you have something on travel as well. So I think
Yeah.
both could be invited on.
Well, this is it, isn't it? We're moving so fast that the changes are happening so quickly that it's even difficult for us sort of leading on it to
Yeah,
keep up. So I think people need to just try and use their common sense, keep getting updated on the government website. We will do this on a weekly basis for sure, where we have specialists one week, and then we have the TCCA, your self-represented TCCA, coming on and talking about what changes you're doing for the community, especially for our vulnerable and our elderly, which is your
yeah. I mean,
expertise and your focus.
I'm hoping in the future, Aysen, when we do recruit this kind of specialist guru, COVID expert, that I won't be coming on, but they'll be providing far more information because it'll be their day-to-day job, and they'll be keeping abreast of everything that's happening minute by minute. So I'm hoping that the quality of information that we have for the community who's watching these shows would be far superior once we've recruited those various roles.
Yes. So, lots of good things happening on the horizons. Gulnil has put, yes, please, can we have people come on from different areas such as business, education, employment, mental health too? Also very important areas. Yes, that's something that I did touch upon in my previous programs, which was mental health. And we did do an employment one, but obviously, again, things are changing. So we will be repeating all of these things. I mean, our last question was, when do we do it? When do we do this next? And the answer is obviously next week we're going to have the specialists, and you'll be coming on the week
Right.
after.
Yeah, because I think the week after we would have a whole new team which will be in place. We'll be able to provide a brief outline as to how the legislation has changed for people, day-to-day individual lives and that sort of area, and we'll be able to kind of launch the new roles that we have and introduce the people who are behind them, so that if people do want further advice, they know who to go to and what they should be doing.
Yes, definitely. And Abi Hussein has also put, hopefully we won't have COVID in the future. I hope so.
Yeah, totally agree.
I'm sure things will improve eventually,
Yeah,
but currently we are in this pandemic and we have been for many months. And really, we just need to keep abreast and up to date with all the current changes and adhere to the rules. As a community, we need to take responsibility as individuals and for each other,
yeah,
and communicate really, and like we said, not break any rules or bend
yeah,
them,
yeah.
so to speak. It's very important
I
now
mean,
that we
I
do
think,
that.
yeah, I think when we consider that the figures now are as high as they have been, I think the only time the figures have been high was on the 10th of April when we surpassed, we reached the high 7,000s as a daily COVID rate. I think the good news is that although no death is good, the level of deaths compared to that period of time is far less. So I think that
Yes.
the medication that's being used, or the potency, or the virus, whatever's changed, is that the likelihood of you contracting it and passing away is become less. Although we need to bear in mind that the frail and the elderly and those with certain illnesses are far more vulnerable than others, and we've got to try
Yeah.
to keep figures down as much as possible, stop people passing on.
That's right. We need to be mindful with how we
Yeah,
move around when we're out and
exactly.
about. We need to be mindful. I think mindful is the word to use, definitely. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Hedin, for coming on
All
the
right. Thank
program. I know
you.
you've been very busy today doing
Thank you.
2 live shows, so I'm very grateful as always for you to come on and give us the latest information.
Thank you.
And we will be doing this on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see you on a weekly basis. But if there are any other changes, we will try as a
Yeah.
media platform to keep people up to date with that. Even if we don't have the programs, we'll just look at our websites, look at the TCCA, and we'll try and keep you as updated as we can. That's
Yeah.
it from us, from the Lady Printed Press. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening, and see you next week. Thank you. Have a very good
Thank you. Bye.
evening. Thank you.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeniliklerle hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Dünyada bir ilk ürünlerimizden full otomatik açılır kapanır sandıklı bazamız. Bir dokunuşla açılan, bir dokunuşla kapanabilen, bayanlarımıza, yaşlılarımıza kolaylık sağlayabilen sandıklı bazamız mağazamızda hizmetinize sunulmuştur. Yıl sonuna kadar full ortopedik baza seti alan her müşterimize 2 adet full ortopedik Memory Visco yastık hediyemizdir. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok. Ancon Furniture.